Hey, alchemists. In the 17th and the 18th century, there was an intellectual and philosophical movement called the Age of Enlightenment. It was also called the Age of Reason. And it did become a kind of a global phenomena. And out of this time period came some great philosophical thinkers. And their way of thinking it changed the way that humanity lived. Traditional authority was questioned, and even the superstitions were taken out of traditional religion because, well, things had to be reasonable, right? And superstition was not always reasonable. So, out of this time period that included men, great thinkers like Voltaire and Galileo, Sir Isaac Newton, and Thomas Jefferson, it was also, they were teaching that we could improve our own lives by thinking reasonably, right? By using our power of reason to change things for the better for ourselves. Now, we still look to our powers of reason. We like things to be reasonable and make sense because when something is reasonable, well, it takes the guesswork out of everything, right? And we can feel safer. We like things to be reasonable, and in fact, we consider being unreasonable an insult. And that's probably our intention if we decide to call somebody unreasonable, right? We're intending to insult them. However, it is our powers of reason that can be the biggest challenge to healing ourselves, body, mind, and spirit. So today, up close and personal, I want to talk about what it takes to live beyond reason. So we're taught to believe what we can see, right? Not well, I'll see it when I believe it, but I'll believe it when I see it. And we like things to be proven, right? It has to be proven and so that it's reasonable. And if it can't be proven, then it must be a conspiracy theory. However, our intuitive and our spiritual experiences, for the most part, they can't be proven, right? But see, even spiritual folk love things to be reasonable. And I think so many of us love that now quantum physics is proving things. So like we can say, well, the reason God is all things is because God is energy, and quantum science shows that all things are made from this energy. Okay, so yes, even in spiritual circles, we love things to be reasonable. Now, back when I was a holistic health practitioner, I worked with clients for over 20 years, and most of the time it was massage therapy. But running a close second was energy healing along with other vibrational therapies like flower essences and aromatherapy and homeopathy. My clients just loved the vibrational healing aspect of what I did. Now, my clients, though, they also had this ingrained rationality that if they paid for something, then it should work for them. And so if they paid for a flower essence, then it should work. If they paid for the energy healing, then it should work. And I can understand that to a degree. I mean, if you were to go pay somebody to cook you a meal, you would expect to receive a meal in return. But we can't have that same expectation when it comes to the healing arts or spiritual or personal development, because in the healing arts, in spiritual and personal development, there is a lot of inner work that we are doing, right? Our healing, body, mind, and spirit, depend on the inner work that we're putting into this. Okay? Now, it's not to say that we can't get support. Of course, we can get support, get people who help us go through the process of healing ourselves, body, mind, and spirit. So ideally, what we want to do is intellectually blend knowledge with the awareness of the mystical realms. And so what this means is we're learning to see the world through the eyes of the soul. And we're also living as a responsible adult. However, there are a lot of things that we think are reasonable in our lives that are not actually very reasonable. Okay. And so I'm going to share just a few that I experienced in my own life, but I also saw that this is pretty consistent with all the clients I worked with. Okay. And so here's one thing that we think is reasonable, but it's really not reasonable. I'm a good person, so this bad thing shouldn't have happened to me. You know, my friend is a really good person, so why did this bad thing happen to her? Right? I'm such a good person, yet I got laid off from a job, and there's a jerk that's still working there. And why did he get to keep his job and I didn't? Okay? So I'm a good person. It's not actually very reasonable. Or I did all the right things. Okay, this is another thing. Well, you know, I did all the right things, yet I still got cancer. I did all the right things, yet, you know, my kids are still rebellious. I did all of the right things, and yet still I cannot find true love in my life. Okay, here's one. I had bad things happen to me, and so I have a good excuse for why I can't do certain things, right? Well, I can't heal because of how my parents, you know, treated me. And I can't lose weight because, you know, of what happened in my childhood. And so I can't save money. I can't be successful because I have this excuse when this bad thing happened to me when I was young. Here's another thing we think is reasonable, but it's not. Someone made me suffer, and so now they should suffer too. All right, I want my divine justice, my retribution. Okay, how is it that so and so, like what they did, it wrecked my life, and now I'm struggling, and yet they're just going on with things? Okay, now here, when we think that this is reasonable and we're really basing our life experience around it, I'm a good person, or I did all the right things, or I had all these bad things happen, so I can't show up in a way I want to, or someone made me suffer, so I can't show up how I want to, and they should have justice, right? Or I should get justice for that. If we believe that, here is where we're going to become disappointed with our spiritual belief. Because here, there's no divine justice. There's no miraculous healing, and God didn't smite our enemies for us. Yeah, so when this doesn't happen, God becomes a randomness quality, right? There's a randomness quality to God. So how do we bargain with the random nature of God, right? And see, bargaining is another thing that seems reasonable to us, right? I promise I'll give up sugar and flour if you'll make me healthy, right? Without me having to do anything else. Okay? I promise if I do this, if you do this for me, God, then I will reciprocate. But bargaining also is not reasonable. It just is not reasonable. You see, the universe itself is actually, it's very impersonal. It's very impersonal. That's why there's that saying that the sun shines on both the just and the unjust, and it rains on both the good person and the bad person, right? The universe and source, it's impersonal, right? It's not choosing to make some people's life great and make other people suffer and struggle. The universe is impersonal. So how do we live beyond reason? Well, we defy gravity. We defy gravity, and I'm going to explain that, okay? Defying gravity is, well, it's what the mystics did, right? According to Carolyn Mace, my favorite author, one of my favorite authors, this is what the mystics did. They were able to let go of everything that kept them tethered to the physical life, meaning they were able to let go of the suffering and the struggle, okay? So defy gravity. We know that Sir Isaac Newton, he came up with the theory of gravity, right? He discovered it. But gravity is more than a physical law. Okay, it's more than a physical law of weight and force and mass. Gravity is also the law of seriousness. Gravity is the law of the heaviness or the lightness of our lives. Okay, so gravity, metaphorical gravity, okay, or the law of seriousness, it's when we become weighed down with the heaviness of life. And so what happens is, if you go back in your history, go back to a time where you experienced trauma, Now, in that moment in time, if you were not able to let go of that moment, the energy of you is turned into lead, and it becomes a gravity anchor in that point of your life. Now, I think most of us can look back in our history, and there's more than one point in our life that we cannot just let go of. Okay, so probably many of us have many of those little gravity anchors, right? Where our energy turned into the metaphorical lead, right? That heavy weight in our heart. Okay, the resistance, the blame, the hatred and the shame. Okay, so our energy is not meant to be lead, right? Our energy is meant to be gold. It's meant to be the light. And so the more mental, emotional, and psychological weight that we are carrying, the more weighted down we are with the gravity of life, okay, with the heaviness of life. So we can still experience healing, body, mind, and spirit, but it will take longer, right? You can still manifest beautiful things in your life, but it will take longer because of all the weight you are carrying around. I mean, how fast could you walk a mile if you're carrying an additional 60 pounds? How fast could you walk? Right? You put the weight down, you could walk that mile much quicker, couldn't you? Okay, so to defy gravity, we have to rely on the power of grace. And I'll have to explain this too. We have to rely on the power of grace because to defy gravity is not reasonable, right? And to live beyond reason, we can't get caught up in our reasonable nature, so we have to rely on grace. Now, Carolyn Mace has my very favorite definition of grace or explanation of grace, and she just says that grace is a power that comes in and transforms a moment into something better, right? So we don't have to make it happen. Grace is a power, it just comes in and it transforms that moment into something better. We don't have to bargain with God. Okay, grace just shows up. We cannot force grace to happen. Now, as Ernest Holmes says, that grace is the givingness of spirit, anything that we could possibly need. So grace is already giving itself to us. We just don't always recognize it and receive it. So I want to talk about how we can be a good receiver, how we can have a willingness to let the power of grace work through our lives so that we can defy gravity. Okay, and the first thing that we want to do, we want to be willing to give up this need to know why things happened. Okay, to know why things happened. And I think a lot of us, we ask those questions. Why did this thing have to happen when I was 12 years old? Why did this thing have to happen when I was 25, right? Why did the economy collapse? Why did we have to go through the pandemic? Why? Well, that's never a question that will ever be answered really in a way that satisfies us. In fact, often, even if we get an answer, that doesn't make us happy. I remember telling somebody that they had hurt me a long time ago. I said, you know what, you did really hurt me, And the response I got was, oh, well, sorry. I didn't know. That was it. It didn't make me feel any better. That sorry that I got from them felt more like a smack in the face than an apology. I'll just tell you, it didn't help right when I asked why. Why'd you have to do that? I don't know. Really? Okay. So we want to be willing, at least be willing to give up the need to know why. Then we want to be willing to forgive the past, right? Just to be willing, that's it. We want to be willing to forgive the past because when we can forgive the past, all those little lead anchors are transformed into light. They're transformed into the gold. Then we want to be willing to release our personal agenda. Now, our personal agenda often looks like, well, this person, wrecked my life and I want retribution and I want them to suffer like I suffered. Okay. Well, like I know I was kind of hanging on that for that one person that I talked to, and they're never going to suffer like I suffered. Really, I can look back now and I see that I'm the biggest cause of my own suffering in my life. Okay. But our personal agenda also keeps us from manifesting things, right? Well, I want to create this thing, but it has to happen just like this. I have to go from A to B to C, right? Just like that. And that's the only way that I'll let it happen. Well, so often when things are happening in our life, they're unfolding in a way that are very surprising. We often don't see the good coming our way until it actually lands. But we can't understand that when all these different pathways are opening, it's to let the good through because it's in a way we had not yet imagined. Then we want to be able to accept where we are right here and right now, right? Now, accepting our life right here and right now, it's not about tolerating the crappy things that are happening right now. Accepting where we are, it just lets us know where we're starting from. Okay, so wherever you are right now, imagine you want to get to San Francisco. Okay, you're not going to look at a map and say, well, this would be a lot easier if I were in Oakland, right? Well, I can't even get there because I'm not in Oakland. From anywhere on this planet, we can get to San Francisco, but we have to accept where we are. Okay, if you're in Texas, you're not going to buy a plane ticket out of LAX to go to San Francisco because it's cheaper. Okay, so we do have to just accept where we are. Now, this is the hard part now. We have to surrender to a higher power. We have to let go and let God, right? We're surrendering so that we can give up the need to know why, so we can forgive our past, release our personal agenda, and accept where we are right here and now. You see, our soul wants the healing experiences. It wants the expansion, right? It wants new experiences. And when we need to know why, when we need to hang on to our past, when we need our personal agenda to pan out for us, right? We're adding lead to our history. We're adding lead to our energetic system to transmute, transform, transcend. So the lead changes into gold. We have to be able to give up the need to know why, forgive our past, and release our personal agenda, right? We have to be able to do that. Our personality does not want us to do that. Our personality wants the guarantees. Well, I'm a good person, and if I do good, then I'll receive good, right? Our personality wants payback and justice, right? If I didn't deserve for this to happen, and so this person needs to be punished. Okay, our personality feels entitled to the miracle. Well, I prayed and I did my affirmations, right? I did all the right things. I helped my neighbor. I gave a homeless guy $10, right? I read Louise Hay's book, How to Heal the Body. I should get my healing, okay? Like I should get what I'm praying for. So to give up the need to know why something happened, right? To be able to forgive the past and release our personal agenda. This does require a belief in a higher power. Now, when we can do all these things, we have access to our inner map, okay, this inner guidance system. And it shows us the connectedness of all things and how there are so many moving parts. We'll never know how everything goes together. Okay, but our lives, they do intersect each other. And God moves through all things, right? God is all things, which means everything in your life is a potential channel to receive inspiration and guidance from God. Everything in your life is a potential channel for a solution to present itself, right? We see how all of life actually supports us, right? It supports us and our soul's expansion. Okay, so when we say something like God is all things, this actually becomes so much bigger. It's so much bigger, like really looking that all things are connected, all the events that have ever happened in our lives. Okay, the good events and the events that we wish had never happened, All things are connected. Everything. Now, when we have to have a reasonable explanation for everything, right? Why things have happened, well, then we're also going to want the reasonable explanation for how things will pan out for us if we make this choice, right? We want the guarantee. And if we're only going to do the next thing, if we have the guarantee that everything will work out, we'll always be happy, we'll always be healthy, all of our loved ones will always be safe, what's happening is we are really limiting our life, and we are limiting our reach, and we are limiting what we are truly capable of. Now, when we limit what we're capable of and our reach, and we limit our life, what are we doing? We are giving up our freedoms. We're putting ourselves in a self-imposed prison, okay? A self-imposed prison. Now, back in 2017, on January 13th, I asked the universe a question. What do I do now? That was my question. What do I do now? Now, that one question, at least as far back as I can count, it started then, but I'm sure there were other things that led up to that also. But that day, that question, it led to direction that didn't make any sense, but I acted on it anyway. It wasn't reasonable, but I acted anyway. And then I followed the next direction and the next direction. None of these things I thought were getting me where I wanted to be, which was being a minister of a beautiful New Thought church, which I am now, right? I've been Unity minister since January of 2019. But I had no idea that one question I asked 2 years earlier would actually land me where I am, okay, right now, right? But I listened and I acted, even though that guidance was not reasonable. There was no guarantee. I just decided I was desperate, so I said yes when I was guided, okay? But I had to get good and desperate. When we choose to live beyond reason, we transform the lead in our history, okay, into gold, into light. And then we get that map of all of the places that we can go, right? All of those places, and we are given the freedom to move forward into that life. So here is our call to action, okay? I have an affirmation. I am free to be as God created me. I am free to be as God created me. Meaning, we are created in the image and likeness of our Creator, and we are here to make choices. That's what we were created for, to make choices and move forward, right? Make choices and move forward. Now, I know in Unity, and I know I have this phrase in one of my songs, but everything is working out for me, everything goes my way. And yet I've had people say to me, like, but I don't feel like that's true for me. Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't always feel true for me, right? When I say, well, everything's going my way, sometimes I feel like saying it sarcastically, right? Well, great, everything's going my way, right? The reason that we are given this life is that we get to choose what we do with it. Everything is working out for us because in this moment, right here, right now, you have the opportunity to make a choice, right? Everything goes your way because you have the opportunity to make a choice. Of course, here's the thing about choices. Sometimes we are faced with making a choice that's difficult, and we are choosing from two things that are not very pleasing to us. But the thing is if we go ahead and choose, we make a choice, we just move forward. And we'll be given a new set of choices, right? We won't be stuck there choosing between two unpleasant things. We move forward, and now maybe these two things we have to choose between, they're not quite as unpleasant, okay? And then we make a choice and we move forward again. Okay, choosing is our superpower. It really is. And this is why everything works out for us. We just keep choosing. Everything goes our way. We just keep choosing. Okay? Will Bowen, the author of Complaint-Free Life or Complaint-Free Living, he says, life is like a slingshot. How far you soar is often a result of how far you were pulled back. And just like a slingshot, the key to flying is to let go. Let go. Letting go. It's talked about in so many spiritual traditions. Just let go. And I know it sounds trite. In fact, it sounds completely unreasonable, doesn't it? Just let that go. Right? And so here's my invitation. Here's my invitation for you. Okay? What is that voice of reason guiding you to do? Is it guiding you to hang on to something that's just causing more pain? Right? Is that voice of reason wanting you to get the guarantee before you move forward on things? Is your voice of reason directing you away from trusting your intuition? Okay? What is your voice of reason guiding you to do? Remember, we want to like see the world through the eyes of the soul. And we do want to act as responsible adults. Okay? But sometimes our voice of reason is not actually the responsible thing to do. And listening to our intuition is the responsible thing to do. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to see a medical doctor, and intuitively I knew that there was something going on, and yet they were telling me something totally different, right? Now, I didn't just blow off, seeing my doctor, but what I did was I demanded to be heard, and I demanded for this other thing to be checked out. And you know what? Almost every time I'm right? Now, I didn't blow off medical stuff, but I also didn't ignore my voice of intuition. Okay, so sometimes it's very responsible to listen to our intuition. Okay, so we want to blend our intellectual knowledge but also have awareness of the mystical realms so that we are seeing the world through the eyes of the soul, as well as living like a responsible adult, because this is how we are creating heaven on earth. So until next time, remember, you are divinely designed to be doing all of these things. That there's that within you that knows what to do and how to do it, and it compels you to act on what it knows. Right there within you, right? It is within you. You are a one-time, one-of-a-kind cosmic event. All right? In everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is.